Thank you, everyone, for joining us today in this beautiful, chilly, frisky February 15th. It's so nice to see many of the familiar faces, so nice to see some new faces. I hope you're all being well and your New Year's have started off well as well. So this year we're doing our community of practice for community's role in emergency preparedness quarterly. So you'll see we have 4 sessions planned this year. Last year we planned to have 6. We ended up, I think, with 5 in the end. So today's session is a little bit of like a continuation of kind of the journey that we kind of started last year. So as you'll see, it's very nice to see you all. And I just wanted to take a moment as well just to acknowledge where I'm calling in from today. I'm calling from the traditional lands of the Kanyahaqa people, and from a place colonially known as Montreal or Tiohtià:ke. And I also want to take just a minute to reflect on this question that my colleague Kieran had, or a question that he had sort of brought up for reflection about land acknowledgement and thinking about this question of who is hosting you. And when I think of that, I think of my own ancestors. I'm from Estonia originally. And if you don't mind muting yourself at the moment so it doesn't uh, cause audio um, uh, trouble for everybody, that would be great. I think,
And reach out anytime.
oh,
And
I
if anything comes
think
up, just send me a
maybe,
text and say
oh,
it's
okay. Hang on. All right. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so coming back to, I just wanted to say, it makes me think of my own ancestors. I'm from Estonia originally. People there have lived on those lands for some 6 millennia. But now I'm a settler here in so-called Canada. And I'm just so appreciative of the people and the generations that came before me, and really thinking about also, well, what is the legacy that I'm leaving, and how am I stewarding the lands that I'm on? So I invite you also think about the lands that you're on and who is hosting you as we start today's session. Also, a quick note on the technical considerations. As always, we're recording this so that we can share this afterwards with those who are not able to join us right now. And if at any point you want to join the conversation, you can feel free to pop it in the chat box. And these community practice spaces are also a lot more interactive. So if you just want to like raise your hand and you want to come on off mute and also ask, just feel free to also just share your questions live as well. And if you have any trouble with technical side of things, my colleague Prachir, who's here with me today, is my teammate. So you can reach out to him. And those of you who haven't met Prachir yet, so Prachir joined us at Tamarack in November last year. And so he's also his role is shared between the community climate transitions and communities building belonging team, which is also the same position as me. So we both are between the two teams supporting communities, both developing climate plans, but also developing plans for belonging and other interventions for community-led strategies. Also, quick note to say that we're all coming to the space with openness. We want to ensure that everybody feels included, that it's a safe environment. So we want to make sure that we're all respecting this, and we are looking out for one another as we do this learning together. Fantastic. So as usual, what I like to do is I like us to go do a bit of a round table so that we can get to know each other, because we're still like a small group. And it's always really wonderful to get to know who we have here with us, what work you're doing, what brings you here. So I will just pass it on to the next person, and then once you're done, then just like pass it on to kind of like the next whoever you see next on your screen. So we'll do a little bit of a sort of passing the ball, so we get to know each other a little bit. And then as we go around, just share one word of how you're showing up today. So here I will pass it on to Prachir to get us started. And then Prachir, you feel free to then find the next person to pass it on to after.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Astrid. Hi, everyone. Like Astrid mentioned, my name is Prachir. I'm joining you all from the Tamarack Institute, similarly on the Communities Building Belonging and Climate Transitions teams. And I'm calling in from the traditional territory and treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat and Wyandot nations, which is colonially known as Mississauga here in Ontario. And the first word that came to mind for me was relieved, and I think it's because I'm sitting next to a window and I can see that it's snowing outside, and it just feels like a relief because I feel like we haven't gotten enough of it this winter. And I know it can be slushy and not the greatest thing to walk in, but it just is relieving that we're finally getting some snow. So that's what I'm feeling right now. And I'll pass it to Ben.
Hi everyone, my name is Ben Gallagher. I'm calling from the City of Mississauga's Office of Emergency Management. Also from the City of Mississauga and the territories that have traditionally belonged to Mississauga. There's the Credit First Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Huron-Wendat and Wyandot nations. And I'm feeling good today. I don't know if I can think of one word, but good, calm, like Prashir had mentioned. It's snowing outside, which has a nice calming effect. So happy to join everyone. And I guess I have to pass it off to the person who's next. So the next person on my list I see is Lynn.
Good morning. I'm calling from BC. My name's Lynn Shepherd, and I'm representing the Westside Seniors Hub in Vancouver. And yeah, we're not getting rain today. Be nice if it were rain or snow, but it's not. So we could definitely use the water. And I'll pass it on to Jackie.
Hello, everybody. I'm happy to be here, and I'm sorry if I might have to pop out. We have a bit of a staffing shortage. I work for the Canadian Red Cross, and I'm the mental health and psychosocial support technical lead for a program and a couple of other areas in the Red Cross. And this is an important group to understand, to know, and to be involved with. So. Hi, everybody.
Thanks, Jackie. Who do you want to pass it to?
Oh, yes. Sorry. How about Sebastian?
Hey there. I'm not sure if can you guys hear me? First time using this headset, so.
I can hear you, but we
Um,
can't see you.
Astrid,
That's
could
all
you
right.
stop sharing your screen so that we could actually see
Oh,
everybody?
yes. Good idea. Okay.
I didn't turn my camera on. I'm actually just eating my lunch. Um, uh, I'm a urban, my name is Sebastian. I'm an urban homesteader from Halifax, Nova Scotia, also known as Shutuktuk. And yeah, I'm here because we're very interested in emergency preparedness and anything around food security and community resilience, and that's why I'm here.
Welcome.
And I'm passing it on, I guess it's next to Henriette.
Hi, everyone. Happy to join you from the city of Waterloo, which is on the Haldeman Tract, the land promised to the Six Nations of the Grand River in perpetuity, but also the traditional homelands of the Anishinaabe, Neutral, and Haudenosaunee peoples. I kind of float around. I belong to a number of local and regional environmental groups. We held climate vigils every Friday night in the fall ahead of COP28. But I'm also deeply involved in my downtown Kitchener Anglican Church, which is hosting St. John's Kitchen, which is a large hospitable space for people who are street involved. And so for me, I think the big question around local climate emergency often centers on food and food self-sufficiency, food sustainability. And I also have a lot of relationships with Indigenous peoples on this tract around food. And so that's me. And I guess I'm happy because with the snow coming down harder now, I indulged my myself by cooking and baking this morning. Thanks.
Oh, thanks, Andrea. It's so nice to see you again. Who do you want to pass it on to?
Oh, sorry. How about to Mark?
Oh, Mark, I think we can't hear you. Yeah. Do you have maybe earphones? No? Oh. Do you want to maybe we'll go to another person and then we'll come back to you, see if you can maybe figure it out in the meantime?
I just changed this
Oh,
up.
now it works.
Okay, great.
Gotcha.
I guess the right microphone. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Holzer. I am with the Canadian Red Cross. I am located in Edmonton, Treaty 6 territory. I have limited awareness of this group. It just kind of got the meeting invite, but I appreciate any venues for collaboration. So I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for being here. Who would you like to pass it on to?
Tara, have we gone to you yet?
No, happy to jump in. Yeah, nice to connect with everybody. It's my first time joining the group today, but I've been sort of thinking about trying to pop in and join a meeting for a little while now. So I guess my word would be excited to connect with people, excited to be here. I'm Sebastian's wife. We both live in Chibuktuk in Mi'kma'ki, and we're both urban homesteaders and very interested in community resiliency and food sovereignty and emergency preparedness and building community. So we share those goals, which is really lovely, and wanted to do this together. Very interested in building community and connecting with our neighbors more, and sort of feeling more prepared together for all of the different challenges that we're facing. We, being in Halifax and Nova Scotia, we do deal with a number of extreme weather events on a pretty regular basis, including hurricanes on a pretty much annual basis. So these things are really topical, and I come at this from a background also working on climate. So I'm a climate organizer as well as a freelance instructional designer and urban homesteader. And I've been leading a team representing Halifax Regional Municipality in last year's Community Climate Transitions cohort with Tamarack. So that is an angle that I look at things from as well, is building community around climate issues and preparedness for climate events and any other challenges that come our way. So excited to be here, and I guess I can pass it on to, how about Peter? Does that work?
That does work. Hi, everybody. So I'm having issues with camera, so hopefully nobody minds. But if you Google Batman, I have a striking resemblance to Batman. So I'm joining you from Treaty 6 in Edmonton. I also am an employee with the Canadian Red Cross. It seems like we travel in packs. I work as part of a regional advisor role for Alberta, Northwest Territories, and Saskatchewan. My role is related to emergency planning. I'm not as familiar with this group, but there could be some nice connections and dovetails in the sense of looking at what are the hazards and risk, and then what are the implications for different communities and people, largely from my region in Western Canada. I suppose a word to describe today, I guess curious, because again, not as familiar with this work or the work of this group, but curious to learn a little bit more. I'll pass it off to Katrina Coder.
Thanks,
Hello. Thank you, Peter. So I'm Katrina, and I'm calling in from the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people, also known as Ottawa. I'm a nursing project officer with Ottawa Public Health Emergency Management Program, and currently doing some work, so special interest in health equity in the context of emergency management, and doing some work in community development right now for community level emergency preparedness. So I'm just really interested to hear what everybody else is up to and kind of learn from everybody. And I will pass the mic on to my colleague, Luke Foster.
Thanks, Katrina. As Katrina mentioned, officer on the emergency management team. I'm happy to be here and picture him as, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. We're both Michael Keith. I other teammate here,
Luke,
Danielle. I might have to turn my camera off.
Yeah, Luke, I don't know, like for some reason, like I think the connection was like very choppy. So I don't know if you want to just try, with camera off, maybe you want to just try again, because like we couldn't, it was kind of cutting out.
I think Luke just said he was going to hand it off to me.
Oh, okay.
So I also work with Luke and Katrina. I work at Ottawa Public Health. I just joined the emergency management team, so they told me that this meeting was happening. So I was very excited to come and join and hear what it's about. I am also on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people, otherwise known as Ottawa. Yeah, my focus is a little bit more in right now, just starting out, how we can help support older adults, especially those who might be isolated or living alone when it comes to an emergency, how they can be better prepared, and then how they can also respond and recover from emergencies. And from there, I don't know if we've heard from Deanna yet, so maybe I'll pass it to Deanna.
Good morning. I am calling, I am on the unceded territory of the Stolo people of the river. I work for United Way. I am an emergency response as a community builder for Yarrow. And with my position, I have been privileged enough to work with Sewali and Samath First Nations as well. And I'm excited to be here.
Thanks.
I don't know, Sipa or Sepia?
Yes, Sepia. Thank you. Thank you, Deanna. Yes, I'm Sepia Sharma, and I'm calling from Chilliwack, which is located on the traditional ancestral and unceded lands of the Stolo people in BC. And my role is that of a community health specialist at Fraser Health. And also the word that I was trying to, I'm just happy to be here with other colleagues. My work right now is really looking at equity and emergency preparedness, but all public health events. So right now we are in process of calendarization of all the events and just be more proactive and look at community building and development as well. So I will pass it on to, I think, Jiri.
Yeah, thanks. Nice to see you again, Sepia. Jerry, are you able to, do you want to come off mute on camera if you want to say a few words of where you're calling in from, what brings you here, who you are? No worries if it's not a good moment. And I think Mary said that she has listening capabilities only today. So I think we'll move on to our sort of session today.
Astrid, I think we have a couple folks left.
Oh, I missed a few people. Oh, okay.
So
So sorry.
no worries. I think we maybe have Ricky, maybe Jackie. I'm not
Oh,
sure.
yes, I'm sorry. Totally,
No,
yes.
good.
I'm so
I
sorry.
can go next. No problem at all. Ricky Frith, City of Hamilton. I work in investment in affordable housing and neighborhood development. And my role in terms of emergency response is I'm the first alternate chair for our emergency social services operations group, and I'm also a scribe for our larger EOC. So I'm heavily involved in emergency response and emergency social services. So I'm curious today to see what everybody else brings to the table and what this group will be discussing. So thank you.
Thanks. And I think we have Darlene, right?
Yeah, thanks,
You can
Astrid.
go.
That's hi, everybody. I'm Darlene Gage. I'm calling in from the unceded territory of the Coast Salish people, and specifically the Hulkaminam and Senchothan speaking people on what is currently known as Salt Spring Island, British Columbia. I'm with Transition Salt Spring. We're a local community climate action group. We've been part of the Tamarack Climate Transitions group for a while as well, and have been taking a collective impact approach to community resilience, specifically in a very rural context. I am looking around me now at a very deep, dark forest, but what does emergency planning look like in a forest is one of my main questions. Thanks, everybody. And I don't know who else to pass it on to, I'm afraid.
Thanks so much, Darlene. It's so nice to see you. Okay, no worries, Ricky. Okay, so we'll see you back in. So, Jerry, if you want to say a few words, if not, it's all good. So, I think Bachir, we're good now, right? I'm not missing anyone else this time. I can't hear you. You're on mute now.
Sorry. I think I don't know if we've heard from Katrina or Jackie. If they don't want to share, that's totally fine too, but I'm just
Yeah, we
trying to
did.
look around there. Okay, awesome.
Yes. Yes. All right. Okay, so let's get started. So, since a few of you are new to this community of practice, okay, that is Ricky. Oops. All right. So, what is this community of practice about? It's really about bringing together different people from community, from as you all are, from different sectors, and to learn more about what's the role of residents in community emergency preparedness. And we're here to learn together. We're here to share together, learn from each other. And the approach that we are taking to this is the asset-based or the strength-based approach, really looking at what are the inherent strengths and knowledge that exists in community already that you can build upon, as well as the collective impact, like the collaborative approach, coming together from different sectors and different lived experiences to work collectively in community for emergency preparedness. And so that is the lens that we take in this this work and in this community of practice. And in 2023, so we explored, we had this sort of this journey about different sort of building blocks or ingredients of some of the things that go into community emergency preparedness from this asset-based perspective. So how do we mobilize community? How do we build trust? What might the neighborhood level engagement look like? We learned about Indigenous ways of engaging youth in community and asset and hazard mapping. We looked at some innovative ways of coordinating community resources. and how to also use collective collaboration approach for emergency preparedness in communities. So if you're wanting to catch up with some of the last year's sessions on our the Emergency Preparedness Community of Practice page, you can look up the previous recordings and dive in if you'd like. So this session is really about kind of connecting all the different dots and looking at well, what are all the things, what are all the building blocks, the ingredients that go into building a community plan. And so we'll be going over maybe some of the elements that we had covered in last year for some of you who are new to the space. So this will be maybe new material. But really we're looking at sort of like these big four kind of pillars and different conditions and the building blocks that go in. So starting off with, whenever you're looking to sort of do anything collectively in the community, what we sort of teach or support our members here at Tamarack with is looking at what are the preconditions of collective impact. And there are four important things here to think about. So the urgency to the issue, what is the support in community for coming together for emergency preparedness? What is is there will, is there interest? That's one of the things that, we need to kind of predetermine if there is support for this. Who might be the champions? Are the people that are doing something already, are they interested in working together? And also then, what are some of the initial resources that we might need? Typically, we sort of recommend around half an FTE or a full-time person equivalent to, at least for the initial 6 months of work, in terms of if you think about the amount of work there is to do to help coordinate and bring people together and convene perhaps the first meeting and that sort of thing, and move the collective forward. So those are the three preconditions of collective impact. I also added another thing into it, social trust. I think the role of social trust, and trusting and supporting neighbors, and just reflecting and thinking, oh, what is a trust, the level of trust in community right now? Maybe you have already been through a climate event or a disaster, or Tara was speaking about how the Atlantic has been hit so hard. We know also the communities in British Columbia have been really hit so hard as well as Alberta last summer. So if there's also trauma, and thinking about what is the feeling in people when you think of that. So that is important to consider before sort of diving into action and assuming that everybody's willing to sort of come on board with, hey, we need to do something together. And really, so touching on the social trust. So, we have social trust when we expect people to have kind motivations. We assume people have integrity. We're willing to be vulnerable and rely on others. And we give people the benefit of doubt when we interpret their actions. And then when communities build social trust, they build social connections. And trust is lower if people don't feel financially secure, if they're living with disability, if they have poor mental or physical health, or if they're a single parent, or if they've experienced discrimination. And also, I would add, if perhaps they've gone through a trauma of getting maybe evacuated, or having lost their home, their belongings, and so on. And when people have faith in the reliability and integrity of those around them, they feel they have people that they can depend on, which is like really, really important. An interesting fact, the 2023 National Vital Signs Report mentions that 13% of people rarely or never feel that they have someone they can depend on to help them when they really need it. So that's something to think about. And a lack of people that they can depend on creates a lack of social trust, right? And then so things that impact social trust, and this is something sort of, if you keep in mind in your head, I think a few people spoke about also like thinking about equity and in this work, and this thinking of this planning, community planning. So things that impact social trust is financial security, mental health, physical health, experiences of discrimination, living with a disability, or being a single parent, right? Or having been through trauma in community as well. And obviously our life experiences, our status in Canada, whether you're a newcomer, whether you're an immigrant, whether you're a refugee or refugee claimant, gender, race, our life situation and our experiences. So these are kind of sort of like all these different intersectional sort of layers in community. So just sort of keep that in mind as you reflect and think and you do this work, and center that in from the get-go. So some of the things that are in terms of like activities that we you can undertake in community as you do this initial sort of starting out part is doing what we call a community scan. So when you really go and talk to other residents and in the neighborhood, groups, organizations, and just see, what support there is for a common work, coming together, and then identifying the champions and seeing who is able to support. Are there any resources, financial or in kind? We often say at Tamarack is that there's this sort of notion of you need to have 100 cups of coffee before you really know someone, or 100 cups of tea. Is that you need to know where you are before you can understand where you're going. We have this top 100 engagement tool. I think the chair can also share in the chat. And we'll find the vital signs report link as well. Oh, you got it. Oh, fantastic. So this is just some of the things to sort of think about before sort of jumping in into action. And if you feel that the trust is low, or if you feel that there is healing or repair and relationship building that needs to take place in the community first, then things like hosting listening conversations and community conversations is a great place to start, to hear what people have to say first and understand their experiences. Then sort of like the second sort of pillar is then once you have identified, once you have your sort of, you have your three sort of starting pieces, and you feel that there is enough sort of trust and momentum in community, you can move forward in gathering a collective or building like your change team. So it should be made out of people from different sectors, looking at municipality, residents, maybe organizations. It could even be from the private sector, maybe somebody from local businesses who might want to help out and be part of it. And really thinking about how can you ensure that people that have not usually been around these tables are invited to be part of these tables. So people with lived and living experience, people who have experienced othering, people who have suffered perhaps loss or trauma through the climate events, to bring that experience to the table, because just again, moving away from this perspective of a typical sort of approach of, oh, it's a family of four who has a to-go kit, who has a car, who can get out of the harm's way, because most people are actually not in that boat. So it's all about recognizing the community expertise, because of the knowledge that people hold in community. So in this part of the work, so we have building this team part. We are also need to think about, well, what is the structure of a collaboration? How, is there an organization that will act as a backbone, or will you function without a backbone organization? But it's important to think about, well, what does this framework look like? What are the roles? You do need someone to be a lead, but it doesn't mean that this person is holding up the entire sort of collaborative. And also making sure that there's adequate resources assigned as well. We have some quite neat tools. I think Brashir is going to share. We have a tool about 5 steps to building strong and sustainable groups. Also on gives, gets, and constraints tool, and a wheel of involvement, just helping people to sort of indicate what is their level of involvement they're willing to give. Because sometimes we can wrongly assume that everybody wants to be at the core, or sometimes we think that, oh, well, we don't have enough people wanting to support this, but then you'll find that there's lots of people who are willing to be supporters, as well as, other. We went into the wheel of involvement in one of our previous sessions last year, so I'm not going to sort of go deep into that right now. Yeah, so those are some of the tools that you can explore and look at. What I will go into a bit more today is the engaging and mapping piece. So in this part, so once you've sort of had you've convened a collaborative, you have identified who's doing some of the roles in that, you have diverse voices that are on the table, you ensure that you have the lived and living experience centered in there. Then this group then convenes a meeting, and then from there on really is the planning around, well, what is the engagements going to happen in community? Who will be talking to? What is it that's going to be? What is it that we're going to be doing together? And then what activities and so on. So some of the great ways of really understanding what the strengths and of the community are is a fantastic exercise called asset mapping. And this is not an asset mapping in a climate sense of the word, where we're talking about mapping assets in a sort of a in that context, but it's really about understanding what are the physical, natural, individual, and community stories, history, and institutional also assets in the communities, really looking at the communities as a whole. I'm just going to pop into the next slide, because I think that will sort of help explain what I'm trying to get at. So when we do asset mapping in our ABCD practice, we map really all the different communities essentially engaged in mapping all the different types of assets there are in community. And usually there is a guiding question that you want to bring into this mapping piece. And we did I think a mapping deep dive in one of our sessions, I believe, as well. But I wanted to just bring in really the emergency preparedness lens to this. So things that you might want to map in community, maybe a question you might ask is, well, what are the knowledge and strengths that we have in our community that we can build upon for emergency preparedness? Something like that. So things that come to mind could be things like, well, we have somebody we have maybe 3 people who know, or let's say 10 people who know how to cut trees. We have people who have firefighting experience. We have people who know how to drive. We have people who know how to do CPR. We have people who know how to take care of children, cook, can speak different languages, know how to do electrical work, construction, meaning maybe there's things that need to be constructed or built. We have people who have coordinating resourcing skills, people who can navigate a boat on a body of water. We have people who are good with animals. If you think about when you need to evacuate, for example, we need to also take care of our animals or pets. people who have wilderness survival skills, people who have indigenous knowledge of this place, and of medicines, of how to preserve food, and also things like strong empathy and interpersonal skills. If you think about a place where a situation where people are scared and worried and stressed, and people who have these skills will be so helpful to have these people around to help, right? Things like, what resources might we have? Oh, okay, well, we have some homes that have freshwater wells. These people have vehicles, generators, air conditioners, medical supplies, tools, boats, trucks, food, chargers, blankets. I was even thinking about things like maybe you have Starlink, for example, and let's say if the internet goes down, but you have a generator and you have Starlink, so you still can communicate. Because I know there's been situations where the communication lines go down and people don't get the alerts. I believe there were 4 people that died in Nova Scotia last year because in the floods, because the system went down and they didn't get the alerts. So just thinking of all these things that you would then unearth in this asset mapping process. Thinking about also physical assets, things like, okay, the trees, the canopy, the screen spaces, the public buildings that could be used, the lakes, the rivers, the places of worship, the community gardens, and so on. And then also thinking about mapping the hazards. I think we had our guests from the Preparing a Home last year who have been working with young people in Indigenous communities in British Columbia and Saskatchewan, where youth help to identify hazards in community. Things like roads that are blocked, exit roads that are blocked, angry dogs, places that are at risk of flooding or landslides, dams, railroads, all kinds of things. Maybe there's thinking, okay, well, there's a tree line that is very too close, so there's perhaps fire accelerants like undergrowth or climbers, what they call, that can, if we identify these areas where it exists, that we can perhaps take proactive action to remove that. And these are all the things that people can do on their own property or collectively in community. Are there any businesses and manufacturing plants that handle toxic and dangerous materials? These are all the kinds of things that you can map out and think about as a community and discuss. So this is really like bringing that emergency preparedness lens to this work. Maybe I'll just like pause for a sec. I think we have some questions in the chat, and if you wanted to come off mute and just like ask live, I'm happy to kind of have a bit of a discussion as well, and then we can kind of jump back into the other kind of the other building blocks that are sort of in the plan piece. If you'd like. Let's see, Katrina, you asked some questions.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Thank you, Astrid. So one of the things that happens with us, I'm with public health, is right now we're working with a community and it has a lot of high-rise buildings. And so one of the interventions I've done after working with the community and trying to figure out what the needs are, what people are interested in, etc., is a workshop on how they can help each other during emergencies, like the residents within the high-rise buildings. And thus far, I've kind of met some resistance in developing more organized systems because of liability. Like, for instance, I wanted to initially have something where we could set up, a phone tree structure or a check-in structure, so like floor captains on each unit, because what happens in these buildings particularly is that there are some residents who can't leave their apartments if there's no power. And so having people on the floors, and there are some volunteers that come, but the volunteer insurance doesn't cover people in stairwells that aren't lit. So the challenge then was, can we get people living on each floor to kind of check in on their neighbors, etc. But the resistance I got was, well, who's responsible? Who's leading this? And how do we, and who is liable? How are these folks getting vetted? And it was a whole kind of cascade of questions that came after, which are valid questions, but I'm wondering if there's a way that others have kind of overcome this.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think like from my end, what comes to mind, I think this is where like the relationships with the local municipality or the city come really or your district come really handy, because people tend to trust, or the fire department, like people tend to trust, and also they have a, you know, it's a legal obligation too, is to safeguard the, you know, people's information and so on. Because I think everybody's worried about, you know, perhaps having your phone number on some Google Doc somewhere. So I think that's the last thing you want, and information about like how vulnerable you are, which is totally understandable. But I think like if part of this, then the collaborative work is to ensure that maybe some of this information is stewarded by either the municipality or maybe the fire department. This could be a great part of the strength of this collaborative. And people might be more willing to participate and share, knowing that. But I also want to put it out to the group. What you know, what do others think, or do you have suggestions or comments on this? Anybody?
What comes to my mind is trying to use technology to go around this. So instead of a phone tree, you could do like a WhatsApp group, and people sign up for it. If you're in the WhatsApp group, you've decided to be in that group. If you had an invite link, as such, you volunteered your information to that group and be part of it. So then that takes that kind of like out of it, that you're sharing information that you didn't consent to. I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, no, that's really good, you know. And I think like many and I have a friend in Newfoundland, and her neighborhood, they have a WhatsApp group, and I've heard of other neighborhoods too, like blocks, to have WhatsApp groups, which is like a great way. Jackie.
Hi, everybody. I was just thinking about the question, trying to provide a, a call tree, or the proper name might have been different than that, in an apartment building, and such a great idea. I think one of the things that we're up against very often is that the infrastructure for care has been professionalized, brought into the professional world and medicalized. And so it's almost like it's become a legal problem at times. And so partnerships are so important, and and in a way, when it's from the expert or from the specially trained person, awesome knowledge and everything else, we bring all of the armamentarium of the professional medical world with us. So it's almost like a barrier to move sometimes from that location, and we have to sort of move collectively with, you know, the people who can provide the infrastructure mobilized. So it's almost like our ideas are important, and for sustainability and practicality, there has to be this really conscious link with the participants, and a really participatory action kind of framework from my position. And I'm sure all of those things are the things we want to do all of the time. And I think in health professions, we have the problem of the system structure, and also of its violence. So we're protected and insulated by it, but it also, you know, excludes in other things, and it also immobilizes us at times like this. So returning, you know, the care and support and strategy development to communities, and less so in the hands of the experts, is sort of like the big thing that we like, is our big work as I see it. Yeah.
100%. I think Yeah, Jackie, I think you touched on such an important thing is like there is this danger of institutionalizing it, basically, and turning everything into a program. Whereas the community part and community taking its own role, making the connections and building that trust, building the relationships, this is not something that you can turn it, you should turn it into a program. Like the collaborative needs to support and make efforts to like we sort of support the activities that help people connect together, that lead the collective work, but it doesn't take over doing community and community needs to do that themselves. Because that, as you said, because then we just like we take over and and then there is no longer that agency and feeling the sense of like that we can also do things that you know that there is a part and we can actually work together rather than sort of waiting to be saved and so on. Yeah.
The intended goal of my work within this particular community really is to transfer that responsibility and transfer that control. But I've still met resistance in, okay, so if you're promoting this and they're getting together and making these structures within their buildings, who's going to be responsible for that within their buildings? And how do you decide who the lead within the building is going to be? And it just kind of tumbles down. And I have been in contact with some of the building managers, but I haven't had really in-depth conversations about that. And I'm not sure that there's a lot of capacity for it. I know like with some of the building managers, they're very involved with their communities, but it's not always. And within this neighborhood particularly, there are a lot of newcomers who don't speak either English or French. And so even just the language barrier between the building managers and the residents, my goal was to try and get, you know, some folks on the floors because a lot of them speak, they're from similar places, and a lot of them have languages that they can speak and communicate with each other in, while some know English or French and this other language, etc. So we can kind of pass that on to them, build that capacity. But also like in the absence of a phone tree, I think the WhatsApp group is good, and we do have some of those going. Well, I don't have them, but there are those in their community, which is great. But the floor captain thing was another thing, because if the phones or WhatsApp or whatever isn't working, that's another way. But again, met resistance with that. Well, how does the community decide who is responsible? How is that vetted? Do we have any responsibility? Like it just kind of risk averse.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I would say like think about like is really reaching out in the building to see well who from the residents who is interested in doing something to help their neighbors and in should there be an emergency and it kind of comes back to those three preconditions. Identify your champions. And it kind of like leads into kind of this segue of what we speak of as connectors. We define it connectors. So champions and connectors, they're similar, but not quite the same, because champions are connectors as well as leaders. So, and I think Ricky mentioned the Kelowna's Block Connector program. Yes, exactly. That's a great example. In Kelowna, they actually connected Block Connector program with their Block Watch program. So like safety and connection together. And it goes the same way for emergency preparedness initiatives. And thanks, Darlene, as well for sharing the examples from Salt Spring, because sometimes just seeing as well what already inherent interest there is in community, who is willing to, who's interested in organizing something, let people come together and just support them in their efforts to coming together. And then just speaking of like connectors, so what we mean by connectors are everywhere, and probably many of you, or maybe all of you, are connectors as well. Connectors are really people that are trusted by their neighbors. They're friendly, they're curious, they're social, they're gift-minded, and they're naturally skilled at identifying other people's gifts and skills. And they know how and where and who to connect them to, and be like, oh, well, I know so-and-so, and I know, I know exactly where you can get this. And they'll talk to somebody and say, hey, this person is looking for help with this. And so they care about the neighborhood and others' well-being, most importantly, and they care about the commons, right? So something that is shared in the community, in the neighborhood, So it's like going beyond the me, right? So, and connectors are those, and why they're so important, because they're the people that are welcoming the stranger on the edge of every community. So they are really key to building belonging and inclusion in communities. So imagine identifying your connectors, having some champions, and it's the connectors who will start the WhatsApp group. It's the connectors that might be going to talk to be like, okay, but I spoke to so and so, so she speaks maybe she speaks French, for example, and she can talk to the other neighbors who don't speak English, for example, or what have you. So just as one thing that they could do. So that's like a great thing to keep in mind. And it's really like helping creating opportunities in community, whether it's through workshops, maybe block socials and many other ways, or inviting people in for a conversation around what can we do as a community to be better prepared for climate emergencies, for example. And that can open up a conversation around climate action, climate change, and all kinds of other things as well that are connected about justice, equity and justice and all. And you can see then, who are people that are willing to also care about things that really, that enough that they want to act upon them and maybe come forward as champions or as connectors. Henriette.
Yeah. Just to pick up on that point, I was thinking that in Waterloo Region, where I live, each of the large municipalities, of which there are 3, have their own, or they have a shared climate strategy. And so I think that if you work from the micro out to the macro, or the macro back to the micro, you'll also find that there are an increasing number of linkages and connections that people can make. If they're, we have 6 areas of transformation, for example, in our climate strategy in Waterloo Region. And people will gravitate to maybe 1 or at the most maybe 2 of them. But then as they do so, and if they live in a tall condo or apartment block, that then gives them even more reason to kind of connect along the civic participation that we're trying to engage in this city. So that's I don't think I'm saying anything new, but just kind of giving an illustration of some of your points.
Thanks so much, Henriette. Yes, and I understand we are out of time today, and looks like we didn't get all the way to the end. So what I suggest is that we'll when we have our next session, we'll continue where we left off today, because I think we started a great conversation here, and I think we can go in a little bit further, because what I wanted to talk about as well, like the slide I was showing you, what I had put together as of just like thinking what are the things that you could identify in community in terms of skills and resources and hazards and physical assets, and how you connect them, but also then thinking about the roles that community members want to take, and putting it all together, and also how connecting people in community too, like matching the skills, and matching also interests and the passions in community as well, and then moving into actually then putting together, then forming a common agenda. What are our priorities, and what is it that is going to end up in the plan, and then having that sort of solidified in that sense. But I think the more important piece is the actual work in community with people talking, learning, listening, and all of that all those ripple effects that come with it as you talk to people, and you'll then see like, oh, there's a WhatsApp group that's popped up, or there's a group of people that are coming together and they want to maybe self-organize for, I don't know, electric vehicles or whatever else it might be, or doing emergency kits and whatnot. And actually in the next session, we're going to have one of our members from the Communities Building Belonging Xenia, who's been doing some emergency preparedness work in her community, she's going to come talk to us. And I'd love to, Darlene, as well, if you're open to it, to come in as well, share about the work that's been happening in Salt Spring Island. That would be fantastic. And totally, it moves at the speed of trust. Exactly. You can't rush it. You can't say, oh, well, we're going to just put a timeline of 1 year and we're going to have a plan ready within this project, target date. It just, if the trust is not there, if the relationships are not there, you can't move forward. So you have to take the time to do that. And sometimes it can take 2 years to build the relationships and the trust before. But knowing that this is what we're doing for the long term, we need to invest in that, right? So I think I'll end on that. And I'll just give 2 minutes to my colleague Prachir to share. We have an opportunity at our Communities Building Belonging that I'd love for him to share with you all before you take off. Thanks so much for staying extra few minutes. I appreciate that.
Thanks so much, Astrid. And yeah, totally understand if folks have to hop off. I'll just drop the link in the chat for this opportunity in case anyone's interested in learning more about it. But it's essentially this 7-month learning and action journey that we're coordinating for communities across Canada to develop plans and interventions for belonging and recognizing the role that plays in things like emergency preparedness in communities, like Astrid's been talking about. And so we're currently accepting applications, and we're really excited because it's the first year. We're launching this cohort, taking communities across the country through the process of developing a plan, testing interventions, and evaluating impact and whatnot. So it'll be beginning in March and running until September. And so we're currently accepting applications until the end of the month. And so feel free to reach out if you have any questions. I'll also drop my email in the chat if that's of interest to you. Thanks, Astrid.
Thanks, Prachir. And thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and I hope to see you next time. Be well. And if you ever have any questions that come up, feel free to just drop me an email. And I'm also happy to connect offline. Yeah, so don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks, Astrid. Thanks, Prachir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Darlene.
Thanks.